How badly?
Badly.
I suppose that explains the smoke. My treasure's not in there, is it? Burning with the witch hunters.
Didn't see it anywhere, and 20 tons of gold is hard to miss.
You mean to say you've come to me empty-handed?
Not empty-handed.
First off, you came to me. Second, I do have something in my hand. The key to a vault, found it on Menge.
It's invisible.
A vault that I need to find on my own. You've not made things much easier for me. Give me that.
That's all you're gonna say? No wry remark, no scintillating joke.
You want a knee slapper? Fine, I'll tell you one. Ready? You lied to me. Again.
What?
You knew from the start who robbed me, but you didn't deign to share that information with me.
That's true.
No, I didn't. But I did deign to help you find your treasure, so stop moaning.
I jest you not, Geralt. You abused my trust.
I can live with that.
This time, yes, you'll live. And now, time to settle things.
That a threat?
Quite the contrary. You helped me, Witcher. So in spite of everything, you've earned your reward.
Don't bother. I know what happened to Dandelion.
Then take my coin. I always pay my debts, even to liars.
Pretty, like...
And a final humble plea. Don't try to fool me again. Ever.
It's kind of rich to have, like, a big spy master type character be like, how could you lie to me? Me, the man who's completely involved in the business of lying. How could you do this terrible oral thing? How could you? Like, okay. Okay, I guess I'm just not caring about these bandits. Like, that's pretty rich, dude. I'm not gonna feel bad lying to a guy who's in the business of lying. Anyway, are ghouls alive or undead? Ghouls are alive. Ghouls are not a type of undead. They are living humans who have kind of devolved due to eating corpses, and dead, rotting flesh and stuff. And it eventually results in them, because of what they eat, they kind of inevitably tend to build up large quantities of dark magic in their systems. And being around all of that death and decay and the dark magic pools in areas where there's a lot of death and misery and suffering. And with all that kind of piling up, it results in them devolving into ghouls. Shame they crumble. Well, so the crumbling system in tabletop isn't quite as on the nose as it is in Total War Warhammer. When a ghoul crumbles, what's actually happening is that the ghoul isn't crumbling away and dying. What's actually happening is that the ghoul is basically fleeing the battlefield. But it's...
Let me have a look.
Like, they're essentially fleeing in a sense, but that's a little... It's a lot of extra work for very little reason, so it's easier just to portray them as doing the same thing. And in tabletop, they just made it where everybody works on the same system. Because it's just easier. Hey, the Battle Factor AV Pick stream. Thanks so much for being here, my dudes. Good to see you. Hope you're doing well. something I have a lot of. Haven't been fighting too many monsters, no. So do Vargulfs and Vargeist crumble, or do they also run away? No, Vargulfs, Vargeist, anything that's actually undead does in fact crumble because they're sustained by magic. They're not actually living creatures. And that includes Vargulfs, Vargeist, Terrorgeist, vampires, skeletons, zombies, zombie dragons, wights, spirits, banshees. Pretty much anything that's not a ghoul or a necromancer. Ghouls are alive, necromancers are alive. Everything else is dead.
Bye.
I'm hungry.
Are cookies undead in Warhammer? Only if you spice them very carefully with a little sprinkles of dark magic before you pull them out of the oven. Though generally, the dark magic can sometimes be disrupted by the intense heat, so I actually recommend sprinkling on the dark magic after you pull them out of the oven. So... Cryptors are alive. Crypt ghouls and crypt horrors are alive. Crypt horrors are just massively mutated. Crypt horrors have basically been like fed on a glut of vampire blood until they turn into those things. Priscilla, where are you, my dear? Upstairs.
Don't you fear the pyre, Free?
No, I don't, bitch.
Don't touch me.
Nope, too high. Do the crowds from the vampire... Yes. I think everything in the Vampire Coast roster is undead. Like, everything.
Geralt!
Hey, you.
Tell me, you and Dandelion, how'd you meet?
At a poetry tourney in Ellender. Naturally, I'd already heard much about Master Dandelion. And it proved true.
She's cute.
At first, I thought him a bloated, narcissistic buffoon.
Just at first.
Well, only cows don't change their minds. I changed mine when he came to congratulate me. Never expected he could lose so graciously. Dandelion can be irritating, I shan't deny it. Yet, I also know he can be fair and noble at times. Well, I very much doubt I could bear to have him around were it not so.
I see. I get it.
No, Morngulls are dead. I mean, look at them. To become I'm actually gonna do a video about Morngulls soon, because it's spooky season, and I know everyone's expecting some fun lore stuff, so we're gonna do some fun lore stuff. It's not gonna be like a full series like the Monstrous Arcanum series was last year, but I'm gonna do a couple of videos focusing on spooky monsters and stuff. And deep diving and going into all their lore and stuff in a fun little way. So I hope y'all are looking forward to that. But Morngulls are super dead. They are super duper duper dead.
Dandelion, I know where he is.
Where?
Dungeons on Temple Isle.
That's not a nice jest.
No jest, sadly. But don't worry, we'll pull him out. Triss has an idea. All we gotta do is find Dudu.
So you must find Dudu in order to find Dandelion, with the aim of ultimately finding Ciri. Sounds like an awful lot of searching, but I do wish you luck.
Don't have a choice. I gotta meet Horson Jr. He might know something.
How did the Strigoi find people to give the blood kiss to make more vampires? Ratwood, so many Strigoi are ghoul kings, and the ghoul kings will often give the blood kiss to other ghouls in their court. So they'll give the blood kiss to like a ghoul they really, really favor or something along those lines. And there are many vampires who give the blood kiss for fun, or because they find it amusing, or they view it as important to them for some reason. You do not need the consent of the person being transformed to transform them. They're like, especially when you're dealing with a ghoul king or a Strigoi, who are very monstrous, when they're expanding their progeny, they will just take someone that they think would make a useful pawn or turn well into a vampire. But they can do it to you, and you have no say in the matter. That's what happened to the Red Duke. The Red Duke was turned into a vampire completely against his will. The Red Duke just wanted to die. And Avarash turned him into a blood dragon.
Do you seek techniques of this no country for
Yeah, there was a halfling that was turned into a vampire by Conrad von Karstein. Though it's not exactly clear why Conrad did it. Some people think he did it because he was trying to be funny. Other people think it was just like a moment of madness that struck him and that he thought it would be like good for some reason. But
Now you.
in the state that the Red Duke was found, he was wanting to die. Like, the Red Duke was a broken man filled with poison and venom in his veins, and he was ready.
Unbelievable. Sick of it.
Are successive generations of vampire weaker than their makers? Not necessarily, but that tends to be the trend. The more generations removed you are from the founder of a vampire bloodline, the more likely that you're not going to be particularly strong or powerful. But that's not a guaranteed thing. Like there have been some vampires who are many ways down the ladder, and they are still terrifying. Would Nagash work better as a legendary lord or Lord Croc type hero? You could do either with Nagash. If Nagash is made into a legendary hero, then it allows him to show up in the game at like substantially more powerful than he would be if you started him off with a lord. Nagash is a little tricky because if you make Nagash a legendary lord, first of all you have to figure out where to put him. Which figuring out which faction to put Nagash in would not necessarily be easy, because technically he has a claim to all of the undead, but all of the undead also like completely hate his guts. Like the vampires hate him, the Tomb Kings hate him, and Vampire Coast would probably not be very sympathetic towards him.
In Total War Warhammer, there is vampire settlement in center of Badlands Orkland. What lore it has? Forgot name of it.
Yeah, Morkheim. So for me, I would say that Nagash is almost... I would be very surprised if he ends up being a legendary lord. Nagash is probably going to be a legendary hero who can show up in any of the undead factions. That would be the most... I think that's the most likely way he's going to appear in the game. There is a chance they might unleash him as a lord and give him the undead legions as his army, but that takes a lot more. That takes a lot more legwork, and would not necessarily produce a better result. It just comes down it just comes down to how they want to implement him in the game and how strong they want him to be. If Nagash is... If they want Nagash to be, like, insanely powerful, then he's probably going to be a legendary hero so that he can just be, like, god tier right at the get-go. If they want him to be... if they want him to be... if they want him to have more of a, like, a long progression and start off substantially weaker and then become very strong, then they will make him into a lord. It just depends on what they're wanting to do. What is with all these bandits that are, like, killing people and I can't stop them?
God, the Reapers come for me.
Oh, a certificate. Let it hereby be known that the bearer of this document is entitled to fight in the ring under the name of Zedednek. Ah. That's convenient. That's super convenient.
Sick of it all. You heard? I'm riding Cleaver's heads. Killing old Witcher. Cleaver, that's the life.
war's on. Bugger keeps down somewhere new every night.
Mawson's in for it now. Cleave is spiteful. Won't let it slide.
Horse.
But yeah, I'm personally expecting Nagash to be a legendary hero. We'll see how it plays out. Like it feels pretty much guaranteed that he'll be in the game. But how he's gonna be in the game is it's a genuinely a toss up. So Loki, to answer your question, the vampire settlement in the center of the Badlands is called Morkheim, and Morkheim was the empire of the Strigos, or the Strigoi. And so the Strigoi vampires, the reason they're called that is because they are descendants of Ushoran, and Ushoran founded that nation. Well, he helped found it, and then he stole the throne for himself. But it was a nation of vampires. It was the first and only nation of vampires. And the city of Morkheim was its capital. But basically, there was a period where the vampires under Ushoran took over that area of the Badlands. They helped chase out all the greenskins, so the Badlands were relatively empty of greenskins, and you had this gigantic, you had this big ol' horde of vampires that had a bunch of humans under them. And Ushoran had a lot of very particular rules. Ushoran's laws were considered fair by most, in that he declared that like vampires could not feast upon just anybody. Like the upper echelons of his society were vampires, but the humans were treated relatively well, and the vampires were only allowed to feed on humans who were criminals, or who had violated the law, or were captured from other tribes. It's not something that, and it worked really well for him. The Empire of Strigoi was not destroyed from within, like, because pretty much all of the other vampire nations that were attempted to be founded had a lot of inner turmoil with their human counterparts, and were ultimately destroyed by other humans who took up arms against them eventually. In that Vlad von Karstein was, of course, defeated by the Empire. Neferata's in Lamia was defeated by the Nehekarans. But Strigoi was unique. Strigoi was actually doing very, very well and grew to be a notable size and took over an area that we now call the Marshes of Madness. But what happened to them was that a big, giant wall started building up to the east of the Badlands, kind of out in the Darklands and in those mountains, the World's Edge Mountains. And Neferata wanted Ushoran's kingdom to fall because she viewed Ushoran as a threat. Because Ushoran, by this point, was wearing the crown of Nagash, which made Ushoran insanely powerful, but he was also completely batshit crazy. Because he had Nagash's spirit, or the a essence of Nagash contained within the crown, now in his head. And it was driving Ushoran insane. And Neferata wanted to make sure that Ushoran's kingdom fell because she was worried that so long as Ushoran's kingdom was intact, he was one day going to come for her, because she had just established her new kingdom in the Silver Pinnacle. So, she helped engineer a series of events that was led to a series of dominoes falling, and all of these dominoes falling finally resulted in a Wa coming west and slamming into Ushoran's kingdom. So this giant horde of savage orcs with a fair amount of like regular orcs and goblins, all this stuff, but it was mainly led by savage orcs, finally came crashing into his kingdom. There was a big war, and at the climax of the war was the Siege of Morkheim. And at the Siege of Morkheim, Ushoran was defending the walls, and he was finally killed by he was just overwhelmed. He got overwhelmed by like a sheer volume of orcs, and he also was severely wounded by a Savage Orc Great Shaman. But he, there was a bunch of crazy bullshit that happened, and he dies. And after he dies, one of the necromancers in his kingdom takes the crown of Nagash and flees to the north. And that was the fall of Mordheim. And with that, all of these Strigoi vampires scattered to the winds because their empire had been destroyed. The people known as the Strigani people were the natives of that kingdom. Because their kingdom was taken by greenskins, they all scattered to the winds and became nomadic people. Who are not very fondly looked upon by most other human nations in the West, especially because the Strigani are extremely sympathetic to vampires, and they honestly seem to actively work towards restoring a vampire kingdom. But for now, they are nomadic people, very similar to the Romani in certain time periods in our history. And are not looked fondly upon. Many of whom do not deserve the prejudice they receive, but some of them get involved in some pretty nasty stuff. A lot of them are just trying to survive, but some of them actively serve vampire lords. But yeah. Hopefully that answers that. Who was the first vampire? Okay, I guess we're just talking about vampires for a minute. The first ever vampire is Neferata. Neferata was the first vampire to ever exist, and the way she became the first vampire is that after Nagash was defeated, and after Nagash was defeated the first time, and he got kicked out of Nehekhara by the combined armies of the Nehekharan kings under Alcadizar, Neferata, Nagash vanished, and nobody knew where he went. And so Neferata, was the queen of Lamia at this point, and she was very envious of the power that Nagash had held. So, all of the Nehekharan kings had agreed that the Black Pyramid of Nagash was forbidden ground. Nobody was allowed to go into it. But Neferata decided, haha, that's stupid. And so she and her agents snuck into the Black Pyramid, and they discovered, I think, one of the books of Nagash. There are 9 books of Nagash, but I believe Neferata found one of them. And she took it back to Lamia, and Nagash had created something to make himself truly immortal. And the thing he had created was called the Elixir of Eternal Life. Or Elixir of Immortality, something like that. Neferata tried to recreate this elixir, but she only had a single book. So the version of the elixir that Neferata created with the help of her court, and according to the Black Library series, she had Archon the Black helping her, but that doesn't work in the broader timeline, so I don't really pay attention to that particular narrative, but you can if you want. Neferata creates the first elixir, but her version of the elixir, because she didn't have all of Nagash's knowledge, was flawed. So it gave her immortal life, but with a twist. The thing that it actually did is that it killed her, but it allowed her body to be sustained by dark magic and human blood. So Neferata turns herself into the first vampire, and she shares this flawed elixir of immortality with 6 others, and they are the founding vampires. They're all first-generation vampires who were not turned by a blood kiss. They drank the elixir. And the 6 were Neferata, who's the head of the Lamian line, Bashanesh, her husband, who is actually Vlad von Karstein, is the head of the von Karstein bloodline, Ushorin, who was known as the Master of Masks, and I think is Neferata's brother, if memory serves, and he became the head of the Strigoi line. Wazorin, who was kind of like the Grand Vizier, or he was kind of the he was very magically intelligent, and he was, I believe, the head of the mortuary cult in Lamia. He became the leader, or the first of the Necrarchs. And then Abarash was Neferata's kind of like pined for lover, but it was kind of like that chivalric love where they never really consummated their love. They kind of loved each other from a distance, and it was complicated. He became the first of the Blood Dragons, and then there were two others. We know their names, but they escape me at the moment because they're only mentioned in a single source. But the two others became the founders of the other two bloodlines, which one of them went to Grand Cathay, and the other one, we don't know where he went, but most legends suggest that he's in the Southlands somewhere. Hopefully that answers that. How's it going? It's going good. We're just answering a lot of lore questions. I do not subscribe to the theory that Ushoran got a corrupted version. All of the vampires, the first generation vampires, the way the curse of vampirism affected them was dramatically different in each of them. I don't like, that's the idea that Ushoran got a corrupted version of it. Comes from the same source that says that Archon the Black somehow was already back by that point, even though that's not possible according to the regular timeline. And he was Neferata's lover, and he was the one that created the elixir, not Neferata, which takes away Neferata's agency. So I really hate that storyline, and I ignore it. I don't consider it canon. I just don't. But the thing about the Curse of Vampirism is that it causes certain traits as a part of you to be exaggerated. And the traits that were exaggerated within Ushoran as a part of the Curse of Vampirism is what ultimately caused him to turn into a monster. Can vampires actually consummate their love? Yes. So, teaspoon of salt. Vampires are dead, but they can perform biological functions. They don't generally, because they don't have to. But by consuming the blood of others, they can basically make their bodies appear as if they're alive and function as if they're alive. So when they drink fresh blood, they can do, you know, they can do the business. What was Vlad's trait? Vlad's traits were, Vlad's big traits were that Vlad was infected with a particular type of madness where Vlad was incredibly cruel and Vlad had a deep desire to conquer. Vlad was very patient, but he was very, very big on, Vlad desired everything. Nothing was enough for him. He had a really bad cruelty streak, which but his desire for conquering, his expansionism, his cruelty streak, and his kind of flair for rulership in almost a dramatic sense has been passed down to his descendants. But his big things are that, and Vlad had the most balanced form of vampirism, where he was able to he was like, if you were to make like a sphere and you had like 4 cardinal directions that show like the various extremes of vampirism, you would have all the 4 bloodlines that the non-Von Karsteins, and then in the exact center where like they all would meet, that's where Vlad would be. Anyway, let's continue.
Greetings.
Don't know you, not letting you in, and don't you fucking stand there.
Oh, I'll get experience if I do this. Wait, no!
Work this out.
No!
I pay you, you let me in.
I hit the wrong button! No!
Get here.
No!
Get in. And remember
Who runs the fight?
Igor.
No! No! I refuse! Wait, no, it just saved. I refuse!
Triss could not help Geralt.
I'm not paying to get in! What am I, a peasant?
No neuromancer and an expert at finding the lost and the missing. Guided by Corrine Tilly, the Witcher had a dream.
By the way, chat, I've got a really important official announcement. I am a lord now. I am officially and legally a lord. As of